Hello viewer, welcome to the GEEK Studio Show. In today's show, I have a guest whose profile is very rich. She's an expert in development economics, she's a gender expert, she's a masculinity expert.
How are you?
Anzenze Were.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. It's a pleasure to host you in the GEEK Studio.
Thank you.
Yeah, just introduce yourself to the viewers. Who is Anzenze Were?
Okay.
Yes.
So yes, my name is Anzenze Were. In terms of my training, I'm a development economist and I write for the Business Daily every Monday. But I also have a passion for gender and masculinities. So I've written a book on men and it looks at how some of the struggles that men go through and how they can be overcome.
Mm-hmm. Wow, interesting. In the show today, we are going to talk about masculinity. This is something you're already aware. What is masculinity?
Okay. Masculinity is really a social creation of how men should behave and how men should aspire to behave. So really when you think about masculinity, it's about that socialization that boys go through as they're young and how that continues when they become men in terms of defining what a real man is. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Wow. I'm sure masculinity in the early years, even before you were born, and masculinity today is different.
Yes.
Can you just give the distinction lines? How is it different?
Okay. Well, there are a bit of things that overlap, but I think prior to colonization in particular, masculinity was a bit more fluid. Because this idea of the man being the provider is really something that came with the colonialists. Prior to that, even in a polygamous setting, the women had a very active role. Women were also economically productive. Now when colonization came along, it added a layer of values that were quite British. And colonization came at a time when it's called the Victorian era.
Yes.
And it was this notion that a woman is fragile, a woman should stay at home, she should be the goddess of the home, of the domestic domain, and she should leave all the, all the provision and the providing to the guy. So this is a value system that we began to absorb as Africans. And that's why today you'll see that for a lot of boys and men, being a provider is a cornerstone of the definition of manhood.
What are the two kinds of masculinity that you are aware of as an expert?
Well, maybe I should maybe we need to take a step back so that you understand how I can answer that question. I think we need to understand, first of all, there's been a lot of talk on media of how the boy child has been neglected. And I think that's an important thing to understand.
Very, very important.
But the problem with that conversation is that it's saying that the girl child is too empowered, therefore the boy child is weak, which is not true. When you look at the journey African men have gone through, that journey started a very long time ago. And even if you look at patriarchy, let's look at traditional African societies, and even post-colonial societies. When you look at patriarchy, and patriarchy I mean a society where inheritance goes through the line of the man, through the line of the father. It's a very male-dominated society. But even when you look at it, the definition of manhood that boys are told they must meet is almost impossible to reach. Under the society that we live in today, to be a real man, you're told you have to be cool under pressure, problem solver, money maker, the security for the home, never emotional, always strong, never show weakness, etc. So boys are growing up being told that this is how a real man is. But of course, as the boys and the men go through their lives, they're going to go through difficult situations. They're going to go through situations where they feel scared, where they feel confused, where they feel afraid, where they feel sad. And so the problem is that because you have patriarchy saying this is masculinity, and yet you're having, another set of experiences, a lot of young boys as they're growing up begin to question whether they're really a man, And they go around saying, well, if I'm sad and I feel like crying, I'm not a man, So the way patriarchy defines manhood really, really puts men in a very small box. And they're told you have to do this, and if you don't do this, you're not a man. And it doesn't allow men to be fully human. So that's one problem. Yeah.
Thank you. In your view, because we talk about technology in the GEEK Studio, and in your view, to what extent has technology shaped masculinity?
It shaped it both positively and negatively. I think it really depends on where that man is in his life, in his journey. For men who feel powerful in themselves, not just as men, but as human beings, they will use the internet in a very different way to men who feel powerless, men who feel threatened by other men who feel threatened by women, and a man who does not feel like he is a powerful human being in his own right. Just before I continue, one of the problems that we're having today in a capitalistic society is that a lot of young boys and men think being rich means you're a real man, you know. So instead of developing the other sides of their being, you know, their character, you know, their exposure, how knowledgeable they are, you know, who they, you know, what they know about, you know, instead of building that, a lot of young boys are just saying, I just want to get rich. Because the minute I get rich, all the women will come. And the minute I get rich, I'll be a real man. As a result, a lot of men are neglecting their emotional and spiritual development. Boys in particular are neglecting their emotional and spiritual development. And then they grow up, and then they figure out, oh, not all women want money. You know, there's some women out there who aren't looking for a man with money, you know, and they want these other things that he hasn't developed, you know, that he hasn't worked on in his life because he's been so busy trying to make money, you know. And to be fair, I think the young boys and the young girls need to understand out there that it is up to you to decide what you're about. If you're going to fall into the trap of saying, money is what makes me and I want to get women through money, then you will attract women who want your money. That is the type of woman you'll attract, you know. Because when you look at, as a woman, I can say there are 4 types of women when it comes to money. They're the gold diggers. We all know them. She wants your money. She doesn't want anything else. She just wants the money. Yes. And if you're a man who defines yourself, or if you're a young boy who is now beginning to define himself as his money, you will get all the gold diggers in the world until you're tired. But there's for women, the other reason why sometimes women get obsessed about money a bit is because they confuse money with security. So they think, if I find a man who is financially stable, I will be safe, my kids will go to good schools, if anyone is sick, we'll be able to pay for the fees, etc. So a lot of women confuse that. But then there's the third type of woman who, and this is why I think we need to understand this issue, especially for young people, that if you find a woman who doesn't respect you because you're broke, then you need to think about what you're doing with her. Because there are some women out there and girls out there who won't respect a man who is broke. But then finally, there's the fourth type of girl or woman who doesn't care about the man's money. But the problem there becomes, if you as a man have decided that money equals manhood, if you're broke, you're telling yourself you're not a man. And now that becomes a crisis that you have created or that society has created for you, you know. So that's why I'm saying, as you grow up as a boy and you go through these challenges, you have to decide whether you're going to work on your character and develop yourself so that you feel powerful, or whether you're going to fall for all these things that being a man means you beat people, or being a man means you rape, or being a man means your money, you know. And that's why it's linked into the question that you're saying about the internet. Yeah? For men who are powerful and who feel I'm confident, and I'm not talking about financially powerful, I'm talking about intelligence, mental strength, spiritual discipline, emotional awareness. You know, it's got nothing to do with money. They will use the internet very constructively. They'll use it to find out information for their work or their projects. They'll use it to find out how to become better fathers. You know, if you're a young boy growing up, you use it up to find out how can I be a better DJ, etc. So there's a lot of positive content on the internet that can be really constructive. But if you're a boy or a man who feels powerless, no problem, who feels powerless, or a boy or a man who's always trying to prove that I'm a man, then you will tend to gravitate towards things that make you feel powerful. You will tend to gravitate towards things that feed your negative things. So you'll get into things like porn, into a lot of porn, because, you know, the way a lot of porn works is that it makes men look powerful. So some, you know, young people get into that
feeling that now if I do this, I become one strong.
You know, I'm so strong. And not also get into things that make you know, objectify women, because some men are feeling so weak in themselves that the only way they feel strong is by abusing women or by watching a woman being abused. And there are social media groups that do that. You know, where men come together and celebrate women being sexually and physically abused, and it's very dark and very very negative.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, thank you, Zenze. Now, look at the youth out there. Like now, let me just mention, the most unfortunate thing is that the teachers strike. You could have heard of some young boys and girls who were arrested doing some funny stuff in Eldoret. What make them do this? I mean, where do they get all this? Is it the internet? Is it the social media? Can you just maybe talk about this? What lead people to, young children, to do all this?
Well, first of all, I think we need to admit that young children are sexually curious. Okay, so there are a couple things that are going on right there. Number one, if you're a young child or a young boy or girl, and you don't feel you can talk to an adult about what you're going through, you will go there and find out that information on your own. So I think really the problem starts with parenting. You, as I have a daughter, and it is very important for parents to let their children know that they are safe with them, that no matter what you tell me, I will not judge you and I won't reject you. So if a young person is in a home where the father is always shouting at them, the mother is not available in some way, or they're too scared, they're like, if I talk to mommy and daddy about this, they'll punish me. Then that child goes elsewhere and starts looking for that information elsewhere. So for me really is, parents have to be open and they have to be ready to love their children no matter what they're going through, because that is their safe space. And so it's very important that young people understand what is healthy content and what is unhealthy content. One of the problems that I've found is that some parents, because they're scared of the internet, they forbid their children. You're not allowed to be on Facebook. You're not allowed to be on Twitter. You're not allowed to do this. You're not allowed to do that. But of course, the kid is going to do it anyway. And as a parent who doesn't know these things, how will you know your child isn't on Facebook hooking up with 17-year-old boys even though she's only 12? So really, again, I say parental guidance is important. But what happens is that there's a lot of content out there that's very sexual, because sex sells. So if you look at the music videos, and I challenge you to do this, come home at around 4:35 and switch on the TV between 4 and 6 and look at what's on all the channels. It is music videos. Most of it is young women shaking, young women showing their bodies, their breasts, their behind, dressing very provocatively, dancing in a very sexually provocative manner, and the men are always portrayed to be very wealthy and rich, and they can afford this and they can afford that, and then those young boys are being told, the only way you can relate to the girl is through sex, and girls are being told you must be sexual to attract boys. You see, so you get a situation where girls are being told be sexual, boys are being told you need to have sex. So of course then this scenario becomes very, very easy to understand. If that is the messaging that young people are getting from popular culture through music, and not just music videos, just listen to the music these kids are listening to. You know, look at the content that they get drawn to online, you know. And what you need to understand is that young people, what they show on TV is even censored. So you can go on YouTube now and find out the real uncensored version of everything.
In fact,
and the young people know it.
The name, you they even know.
You just Google and it will be there. You'll be able to watch it. So this, if you don't teach your daughter or your son how they're being told glorify sex. They're being told, men, you have to, boys, the only way you're a real boy is if you have money and if you have lots of girls and have lots of sex. And girls are being told, girls, the only way you can be popular with boys is if you're sexually available and if you dress in a sexy way. Because you're dealing with people who want to be popular. I remember as a teenager, I wanted people to like me, you know. So, you know, these are some of the issues that are beginning to emerge now.
Okay, thank you.